Hello, thanks Tom. Hope you can all hear me. Good afternoon. My name is Dhan Pandya, Head of End User Experience for Tokio Marine HCC International. We're a global specialty insurance provider. A little bit about us actually. We currently look after around 4,000 end user devices within our NextInc environment, but we are part of a much larger group of around 86,000 users across the globe. I'm really excited to be here. It's always a pleasure to attend NextInc events, and I'm sure as many of you, I was really excited about some of the announcements in today's keynote, especially the Spark AI agent for users. So that's definitely something I want to be hearing more about. So to get on to what I'm going to discuss today, as Tom mentioned, I was here a couple of years ago and I was talking around how we were implementing NextInc to help us measure and map our DEX, our digital employee experience. So really, and at last year's podcast, I said to Tom, look, it'd be really exciting to come back and to sort of say, you know, we've implemented DEX, so what? So, you know, your platform's in place, the data's flowing, sentiment's being measured. You know, really, now what do you do with it? So can I just have a quick show of hands? Who is measuring their DEX right now? Fantastic. And also put your hand up if you're using a specific DEX platform. It doesn't have to be NextInc, it could be anything. Okay, fantastic. That's really good to know. So about half of you are measuring your DEX at the moment, and I'm sure the rest of you are highly interested. So another show of hands. Who's familiar with Lord of the Rings? Yeah, I suspected that might be the case. So the reason I've got this up there is, for those that are familiar, and sorry about spoilers, but towards the end of the movie, the end of the story, the two young heroes, Sam and Frodo, they have just performed a heroic act. They've destroyed a ring, and I think Sam says to Frodo, oh, the eagles are coming. And then they get picked up with the eagles and they get swooped away to safety. And then many a cynic sort of said, well, why didn't the eagles just take them to Mount Doom in the first place? Or better yet, why didn't the eagles just take the ring and drop it into Mount Doom? But there is a reason for that, and that's unfortunately the evil Lord Sauron. Now, I'm not saying we have to combat Lord Sauron, but Sam and Frodo had to go on that perilous journey. They had to overcome their challenges. They had to do a lot of hard graft, right, to get to the point where they could destroy the ring, bring down the evil barrier, and then start to soar. So the parable I'm really bringing here is that, look, you're going to have to go on, you know, a bit of a perilous journey, overcome some challenges, and get your DEX to the point where you can really start to soar like the eagles. So today I'm going to cover a little bit around DEX as a KPI. I'm going to cover a DEX blueprint and best practices, and some of the ways that we've taken things forward at Tokio Marine with the end user experience team. I'm going to look at our DEX health roadmap. We're also going to cover a continuous improvement initiative and technology upgrades and the impact that DEX has and part it plays in technology upgrades in your organizations. So DEX as a KPI and performance tracking. So one of the things I'd recommend is if you're measuring DEX, well, if you're not measuring DEX, get measuring. But if you are measuring DEX already, I think it's really important to get it noted, listed as a KPI. Advertise it, pimp it out, put it out there in all your reports, and start to get it noticed. Once it's become a critical KPI, it can really help reflect you know, the successes of the organization and the performance. But you need to get it recognized as a KPI first. Some of the things that we did, we published it in our monthly report. People kept saying, oh, what's this DEX? What's this DEX? What does it mean? But that was great. We welcomed the questions. We wanted to be asked, you know, what DEX is. So we made sure we included a graphic around the DEX score, how it's comprised, how it's calculated, to hopefully get people to take notice and to take an interest. I would warn you though, as you make DEX a KPI or get it recognized as a KPI in your organizations, for your teams, for your departments, there is a rise in accountability. You know, live by the sword, death by the sword, you know, some people say. So you have to be careful of, and you know, there's a lot of challenges that come with that as well. So please beware, but don't let that stop you from getting it recognized as a KPI. So look, there's a snapshot of our actual NextThink dashboard at the moment. It shows us, the DEX score over a period of time. And it's really important that you do look at your DEX score over a period of time. And I would actually say that this is a good snapshot, but actually you want to see it for as long as you can. So make sure you note down your DEX scores whenever you can. At the moment, and I will mention this again, we note down the DEX score daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. So as well as looking at the NextThink dashboard, we also have the information in a separate repository, and actually that will come in real handy for a lot of your initiatives, and also for a little anecdote that I'm going to tell you in a few slides' time. It's also useful, to help track whether the improvements you're making are having the impact that you wanted to over time. So I talked about getting DEX recognized as a KPI, but how did I know that it was really making a difference or making an impact? Well, I was called into a meeting with my manager once, and he sat me down and he called up the latest monthly report that we contribute to for technology, and he said, "The DEX has dropped." And I said, "What?" And he said, "The DEX has dropped." Now, I was feeling a bit ambivalent at this moment. One, I was like, oh no, the DEX has dropped. But on the other hand, I was like, oh my God, he knows what the DEX is. And he cares about it enough to ask me and why it's dropped. So I wasn't showing too much pleasure. Obviously, I was dismayed that the DEX has dropped. My manager said, look, I want to understand why it's dropped. Could you arrange a session with me and some of the other members of the team and take me through, our DEX score and what we're doing to maintain and get our score back to where it was before. So I was really excited because at this moment in time, I knew that if he was seeing this from the technology report, he'd also mentioned that the CIO was quite interested as well. And here's a quick tip as well. Leave a copy of DEX for Dummies on your CIO's desktop. It can really help. And that's a real world thing. Our CIO read that, and we've never had so much interest garnered ever. So get yourselves a copy of that and make sure your CIO has a read. So went back to our records, and we pulled out, a visual representation of the DEX score over time. So if you're looking at this, I don't know if you can see it too clearly. I think the point that my manager grabbed me in was around February 25. So, we went back to the manager, we explained, the whole history of why, the peaks and the troughs of this. And you can see now that actually from Feb 25, we've had a good, solid increase, and actually we're plateauing at the moment, which is great. And he was really interested, and he was really invested in making sure that we had the right resources in place so that we could continue to improve the DEX score. So I mentioned about making DEX a KPI. At first, when we started measuring the DEX score, we only measured the technology score. If you don't know, in NextThink you have a technology score and you have a sentiment score, and you can choose or not choose to combine them to get an overall DEX score. So at first, we would only present the technology score because we weren't measuring user sentiment. But that soon changed, and we did start to measure user sentiment. So now, we present a combined DEX score. As I said, make sure you track your DEX, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. Yes, as I said, the NextThink timeline is great, but keep it off in your own repository and keep an eye on it. One of my daily tasks is to look at the DEX dashboard to see where we are, to find out whether I'm going to get called into my manager's office again or not. And one real big win for us was, in terms of getting DEX as a KPI, was integrating it with our overarching customer satisfaction KPI. So within technology, we've defined 6 KPIs that goes out to the business around how we're performing. And one of those is the customer satisfaction KPI, and I'll show you in a moment what it's comprised of. But by making the DEX score part of that, it became part of the conversation and really helped establish getting DEX on the map. So when people were asking, what is this DEX about? We were able to explain, give them information, and really enlighten them into what it's about. And then people started to get the idea. However, as I said, remember, when you make it a KPI, you have to remember the rise in accountability that you will have. So once it's on there, any drops, you're going to get asked about and scrutinized. Similarly, with any successes, you'll also hopefully be celebrated as well. And most importantly, improve your customer's experience. So this is our actual KPI for customer satisfaction. Some of my team may recognize this from producing the reports. And the DEX score is front and center there. And it goes on to help us get an overall score of 94.44%. So alongside our telephony performance, our incident and request SLA achievement, and our survey scores, it's a real key part of what we're visibly showing the business our performance is at. So I think that's really, really important. So, best practices. So I'm going to take you through some of the things that we've done in addition to making DEX a KPI. But one little tip that I would give you all, especially those that aren't measuring DEX necessarily yet, or even those that have just started to, if you do a Google for Gartner Blueprint for DEX, there's a really, really great article, and it has a very useful 7-step framework. I would highly recommend you all to have a look at that. And take from it what you will, cherry pick what you feel will work for yourself, your teams, and your organization. But I think, look, one of the key best practices is to develop a common roadmap. Now, roadmaps aren't anything new to us in technology or even in business or at work. So why am I saying this for DEX? Because I think it'll really help you get organized, understand exactly what you're aiming to do with your DEX over time. And again, it enables you to be able to present that to your team, to your department, to your management, and everything is very clear. And the higher the DEX, the better the business outcomes. That's really what you want to go with on that. And you want to get that support for your initiatives. So you need to be able to demonstrate, well, what is it you're going to be doing and how you're going to do it. I think another best practice is collaborate across the teams. Yes, in my team, the end user experience team, we've tried to become highly conversant in the language of DEX, but we want to spread it wider than that. It's not just about the end user experience team, it's about the technology team and also the business. So we're very keen to get other teams and departments involved within DEX. And we saw there were many facets in the keynote earlier today. So we have worked with networks, we've worked with the infra ops team, and they all are aware. Another team that we've worked with quite a lot is the service management team. They monitor the DEX sometimes when there are major incidents to see whether there's been any impact on the user experience. So definitely recommend collaborating across teams and getting DEX out there in that fashion. Focus on employee journeys. So a real big important factor of DEX is the technology score. What we've done is we've worked hard to make sure that every 2 quarters, we publish and update our technology catalog. And what that means is that for every identified profile we have in the organization of users, we have a technology stack that we know is going to help them perform and work better. That gets you off to a flying start when it comes to DEX, especially with the technology score, but also the user sentiment score as well. If you're giving employees the technology and tools they need from day one, you're doing the right thing. So really focus on the employee journeys, make sure you're giving them the right technology at the right times. I would also recommend communicating the language of DEX, digital employee experience, DEX, what is DEX, however you want to say it, get that kind of message out there. And a real big thing, and not just within our organization, but hopefully catching on, in a lot of places, is you said we did. When we get feedback, when we get user sentiment, we want to play it back to our users and say, look, this is what you said, this is what we did about it. Sometimes it's not always solving their issue or doing what they've asked. Sometimes it's like, we can't do that at the moment because of these reasons, or we're going to do that on next year, or it's coming in Q4. But those conversations and that feedback can really, really help engender the trust. And once you start building that trust, it will snowball and it will help users to keep coming back and give you that feedback and again, help you maintain and raise your DEX. So I mentioned a little bit about the DEX roadmap. So I think it's really important to create a roadmap. Like I said, it's not nothing new, not teaching anyone how to suck eggs, but really it'd be so useful if you put together a cohesive roadmap of exactly what you're doing, using your DEX measurement tool. We use NextThink, but there are a lot more sources and facets you need to take into account. Technology changes, perhaps Windows 11 upgrade, all of these kind of form part of your DEX journey. So put it together in a roadmap. Using the roadmap, again, kind of project methodology, create your work packages. Create your work packages so your teams are not overwhelmed with, oh my God, we've got to upgrade the DEX, we've got to improve the DEX, it's falling, it's slipping. No, take it into bite-sized manageable chunks. So create those work packages. And a real key thing, and this is something that we learned and we fed back to my manager, going back to that fateful meeting, is, measure your DEX before and after you make any changes/improvements. So, for example, whenever we are about to implement something from the roadmap, we take a DEX reading from around 7 days before the change and around 7 days after the change. We really want to understand and see whether what we've done, the work we've done, the changes we've made, have made that difference, have made that impact on the DEX. And we actually report back to my manager and to the CIO to sort of say, look, these are the things we've implemented over the last quarter. These were the DEX scores before, and this was the DEX scores afterwards. It's really, really impactful, and I can't recommend doing that enough. So this is an actual, this is our actual roadmap that we went back to my manager with. Quite simple, just outlines some of the elements and initiatives that we're going to be following, some of the changes that we're going to be making, and it just makes it easier for us to have that common language and conversation, not just with my manager, but with the rest of the team, with the department, and also the business if necessary as well. So I can't recommend getting a coherent DEX roadmap together enough. Continuous improvement. So I'm going to let this slide sit here for a minute. So DEX is a strategy. It's not something you do on a Tuesday at 2:30. It's not, something you have a meeting about once a month. It's something that you continuously have to work at to really get to that stage of improving the workforce technology experience. I had a conversation with someone else that uses NextInc, and they said, look, we're really keen, we want to measure our DEX, we want to make improvements, we really care about the user experience, but we're doing DEX on the side. That kind of made my heart break. You can't do DEX on the side. It has to be front and center. If you do it on the side, you may as well not do it. And that's why I think this is a really powerful message. It's a strategy, and if you take it as that, then you're going to get some real gains from it, and then you're going to really make a difference to the most important people, who I'm sure you'll all agree are your users. So we're getting a lot of feedback from the user sentiment process. We had initially started with obtaining feedback twice a year in big bang waves. So every 6 months, every user on their device would get a NextInc campaign, and it would ask them a series of very curated questions around their experience, and it would ask them for open feedback at the end. We did change that over time, so we now conduct what we call pulsing. So now we do kind of 1/6 of the user populace every month, which is a lot handier. It literally helps us keep our finger on the pulse, notice any trends, and take actions quicker. Again, I can't recommend that enough as well. So what are we doing with this user sentiment feedback? So we actually identified that as well as user sentiment, we have a plethora of inputs, ticket surveys, ad hoc feedback, people telling us anecdotes during end user forums, complaints. We do have a series of inputs, and we started to wonder that what could we do to kind of put this together and approach this in a formulaic, systematic way. So what we decided to do was to define and implement a CSI process. So as part of that process, every sentiment comment is logged, ticketed, and followed up. Now, this isn't your standard incident or request. There's no SLAs around it, but it is logged and cataloged, and we do look at them, and we have a weekly meeting where members of the entire end user experience team, no matter their role or location, participate, look at these tickets and feedback, and take them on. Whether it's going back to the user via email, dropping them a line on Teams, giving them a call, going to see them, setting up a meeting, we always go back to every user. Sometimes it's not straight away, sometimes it does take a little while, but we do. And when we do, first of all, your user is appreciating it. Hey, I said something, and you guys are listening, fantastic. Then it's about understanding them, asking them questions around the feedback they gave in order to help us improve. And we feed that back into the you said we did communications. So every quarter or so, we do feed back that information that, this is the type of items that we picked up from you, and this is what we've done about it. So logging every ticket, logging every user sentiment comment as a ticket, and dealing with it as a formulated process has really helped us to marshal and monitor our DEX going forward. We actually proactively target those users with a low user sentiment score. We give them a call and say, hey, why'd you leave us such a crap score? No. We give them a call and say, look, we'd really like to understand why you gave the scores you did. First of all, we really care about it. And secondly, we'd love to be able to do something about it. And we don't tell them, bribe them to give us better scores next time. We're hoping through the work we do and through the engagement that the next time they give a user sentiment, we should have fixed, improved, or adjusted what was causing them the issue, so they should give us a better user sentiment score. We also proactively target those with a low technology score. We give them a call to find out why they could potentially having a frustrating time on their machine or with the technology. Sometimes they don't even notice. Sometimes they're like, oh, everything's fine. Brilliant, okay, great. Sometimes they're like, you know what, I'm so glad you called. I have to do this spreadsheet with 64,000 rows, and I could really do with some more memory. Well, you know what, we'll take that into consideration. We'll look at their machine, see if we can upgrade the RAM, see if we can give them a new machine. We also include feedback from all other areas as well. So it's not just user sentiment that we look at in the CSI process. We also look at ticket survey feedback. We also look at the feedback that we get from end user forums and any complaints or any ad hoc feedback. I'm just going to show you. So year to date, these are the actual tickets that we've looked at year to date. So 276 sentiment survey tickets. And what that means is that we've logged it, we've gone back to the user, and we've taken some action beyond just talking to the user. We've explored the issue. We've tried to understand in a better, more formulaic way. Now, as I said, these are not SLA'd tickets. So it's not giving the same burden that an incident or a service request would, but that doesn't mean it's any less important. In fact, I would vote that it's just as important, if not more. We also have the ticket survey, 22 comments that we followed up, and also forum feedback as well. So I just want to show you that out of all those tickets, we break them down into categories. And this is great because then when we're looking at this holistically, we can actually identify areas that we need to improve on and understand whether there are any overarching themes that we need to take action on. So from here, you can see hardware, user support, and applications. So by speaking to these users, we build up a picture and we understand what moves we can make to improve, hone, and refine the experience and also maintain and improve our DEX. So, technology upgrades and the DEX impact. So, one great thing we noticed is, and I'm sure you're all probably fighting your own battles to upgrade to Windows 11. We're nearly there, by the way. I think we've got 20 machines left, right? So, one thing we noticed is as we were upgrading users to Windows 11 on their existing hardware, because it was and it turned out to be a better operating system in terms of efficiency, the DEX score was going up. But we wouldn't have known that if we weren't tracking DEX. But we noticed that as we upgraded sets of users to Windows 11, the DEX score for those users went up, which was fantastic. And that was a great win to be able to play back to the business that, look, we're spending a lot of time, effort, and energy upgrading these users to Windows 11. Yes, from a security perspective. Yes, from a support perspective. But actually, it's making a great difference to the user experience. So it was just another string to the bow. We also had an issue where we had to replace a whole bunch of our laptops. Many of you may have bought or had to buy laptops during COVID, and many more companies are running 4 or 5 year cycles and sweating their assets. So we'd come to the end of a 5-year cycle on a bunch of our laptops, around 500. And we went and we made a case and we said, look, we need to replace all this. And I'll show you how we discovered all those machines in a moment. So we went to the management and said, look, we need to replace these 500 machines. Give us some dosh. Management went, we're tightening our belt buckles and, bottom line and, the usual stuff, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And they said, actually, look, we can only, at this moment in time, afford to replace half of them. Sorry, which half should we replace? You guys decide. Damn. Well, actually not. Because by using DEX, it really helped us to identify out of those 500 devices, which ones were giving their users the poorest performance. So guess what? We prioritized replacing those 250 users' devices first. It's not that we weren't going to or haven't gone on to replace the other 250. We don't want aging and unsupported equipment in the environment. But in terms of helping us make that quick decision, that prioritization, DEX was a real big winner for us in bringing that home and showing us how to go forward and make those decisions. So we actually integrated, we use Dell for our laptops. We actually managed to integrate the Dell Warranty API and Warranty Dashboard into NextThink. And that actually helped us identify which machines we needed to target for refresh. We then looked at the models that we had in place, and we realized that there were two types of model which had a particularly low DEX technology score at this moment and would be most benefited by getting refreshed, and we targeted those first. So you can see that looking at the Latitude 5400 and 5420s, the average DEX was around 56.6, and by replacing it with the Latitude 5450, we should get the DEX up, the technology score, up to around 68. So this really helped become a guiding light for us in our refresh and took away a lot of the uncertainty about, oh, you know, do I give it to this person because they're a friend of IT's, or do I give it to that person because they made me a cup of tea? No, this is an empirical way of helping you decide which technology you need to upgrade. The other thing about this was, as I said before, it's really important that you measure DEX before and after. So one of the key things that we did was to measure the user experience technology score of the user's device that we were going to replace before, and once they had the new bit of equipment, we wanted to measure it after to see, have we made an impact? Yes, they've got something shiny and new, but is it making a difference? And it was so powerful to go back to the business, to go back to the CIO and the management and say, look, we increased technology score from an average of 54.20% up to a whopping 80.81%, which is even more than we actually, first estimated from the previous slide. That is a really, really powerful bit of information and a metric that you can go back to your business with, that the work that you guys do and your team does every day is going to make a real big difference to the user's experience. So I just want to put this slide up here for a moment. This is literally a Google of, define what does digital employee experience mean. I'm not going to leave it up there too long, but I'm just going to draw your attention, as I have with the yellow highlight, that don't forget the point of digital employee experience. It's about increased productivity and satisfaction for your users. And it's really important, I think, that people don't lose sight of that. It's not about upgrading people's laptops. It's not about looking great in front of your manager and the CIO. It's about increased productivity and satisfaction. So to conclude, I would say the biggest bet to making DEX a success, if you're already measuring it, if you're not measuring it, get measuring it. But if you're already measuring it, is to integrate into your strategy. It has to be front and center. Please, I don't want to hear any more sad stories of doing DEX on the side. That really did hurt me. Sorry. It's really important you integrate DEX into your plans purposefully, to improve, ultimately your customers, but, first of all, your employees' experience. And we take it really seriously at Tokio Marine. This year, everybody in the end user experience team, they have a personal recorded objective. They have to define, not the Google definition, but they have to define what DEX means to them and what they are doing to impact the DEX positively. That's in everybody's personal objective this year in the end user experience team. The other key thing is we've asked everybody to recertify as a NextThink certified associate on the 2025 track. So look, as I said, not teaching anyone how to suck eggs, nothing, hugely, huge revelations here, but hopefully some guideposts for you on your own journeys. And I'd love to hear anyone's stories of their own DEX implementations. Get measuring, get DEX as a strategy, and I'd really love to open the floor up to any questions and answers.
Just on the, the increase in productivity that DEX hopefully provides, how do you then estimate the sort of the return on investment? So how does that all work? Because there must be a sort of a feedback on that as well.
I'd love to say that. I'd love to say that, what would be really handy is, we've improved the DEX for the sales department, and then, they've got, 15% more sales. I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't know if anybody else is quite there yet. I think just by tracking the DEX continuously, we can section off the sales department to track their performance, and then we can go and interact with them. And I think the first thing they probably tell us is, you know what? First thing I'd like them to tell us is, technology's fine. I think that's the first story we want to hear. But then we want to work with them, and we want to try and understand, well, how can we make it better? How could we help you in the way that you work at the moment to be more productive? So I think it's about having that conversation. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, I haven't been able to link it directly to say, yes, you're able to get more sales because your laptop performs. Actually, your laptop needs to perform anyway. But having a conversation with them and them saying, what would be really useful, if I could access my CRM on an iPad, that would make things a lot easier. So we could track, well, at the moment, it takes them 60 seconds to complete a CRM customer inquiry form. If we give a certain portion of the team iPads, we've now clocked that down to 30 seconds. So that would probably be my answer to that.
I'll just put in a plug as well for the BDO breakout at 2:45, where that will be addressed more directly. So well worth traveling.
There you go.
Hi, and thanks a lot for the presentation. It was really nice. I just was wondering, how exactly did you work around the setup of aligning this DEX strategy around all the IT teams who have to work on it? Because you have on the one side the strategy around the communication, but also the teams who are actually, the IT teams who are actually working on implementing or working on, for example, the DEX core. And it's a whole setup around aligning all IT teams within this DEX. So if you can bring some, insights on how you aligned or segregated the teams that are working on DEX.
Okay, so I think, look, in Tokio Marine, we're quite fortuitous in the sense that, I'm head of end user experience. So my team is aligned to user experience from day one. And that was born as the result of a transitional project back when I first joined about 3.5 years ago. So first of all, my team is aligned in that way anyway, which is fortunate. I get that not everybody's teams are organized like that today, but it's something that you should probably go for. We've changed over time. So now, we've brought in, a specific part of the team to monitor and manage the DEX. Other parts of the end user experience team, like the service desk, like the desktop engineers, as I said, we've got them on board because we've got them to understand what it is we're trying to do, what DEX means. So in their day-to-day roles, it's not just, I'm just fixing this computer or logging this ticket. This has an overarching effect. This is going to have an impact, and actually, where does it sit in the wider scheme of things? Which is why we've got that objective about what does DEX mean for me, right, within the end user experience team. Now, if you're looking outside of that team, I think you'll find that the good thing about DEX is it's logical. It's not going to be asking you to do things that don't make sense. So when you're going to these other teams and saying, look, I really got, the networks team, and I need you guys to look at this site, what it should be helping you to do is that common language that I was talking about, sharing that with the wider teams is so important. Because when we presented to them a case where users and the technology score for people's users' Wi-Fi at one of our German offices was really, really poor. But the networks team kept saying to us, no, we're showing 100% all green lights, all green lights. But actually, when we looked into it with them, and we said, look, we're representing the user here. They said, okay, well, let's have a look together. So we looked at their systems. Sure, it was showing 100%. We looked at Nexting, and it was showing a much degraded service for the user. So actually, by going through that cycle with them, they understood what we're trying to do, and they were on board. And then we realized that yes, the throughput, the point of presence into the building is 100%, but there was a problem with the Wi-Fi. And all of the users were connected via Wi-Fi, and because it wasn't configured correctly, they weren't getting the bandwidth that they needed. And so actually networks, they fixed it, and they came back to us and said, we actually want our own dashboard now, so that we can understand the user's experience when we're looking at sites, and we're going to submit that. We outsource our networks. We're going to be looking at that when we present our reports to you. So I think it's by those little examples that you can get the rest of the technology teams to work with you. If you were talking about the teams in the business, I would just go back to the trust. If you listen to them, if you take action, if you engage and you build that trust, they're going to keep coming back. And you might think it's more work for you, but at least it will keep you employed.
Any further questions? Just raise your hand. Okay. Can I pass this along, please? Sorry.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the presentation, very insightful. So you said a little bit about I think you mentioned the network team that just for a root cause, I guess. So can you elaborate maybe how exactly you use DEX and NextThink for looking at the root causes? And what are the typical root causes you would identify for, let's say, if the DEX score is dropped?
Okay, so with the networks team, when we were looking at that, we were looking at the users on site. So we created a filter on dashboards, and it was a couple of years ago now, but we looked at their Wi-Fi performance, and NextThink gives you an indicator of whether it's good or bad. And we were noticing it's bad. So then we presented that dashboard back to the networks team to say, look, these are specific IP ranges of users in the German office that we're dealing with. So, this is the information we're getting. Now, in terms of DEX overall, again, going back to that kind of situation with my manager, I took a step back and had a further look and to sort of say, well, actually, what is impacting the DEX? Let's dive into it further. And it's got a lot more complex in NextThink version 3. But that's actually great. There's a lot more data points to cover. So there's a myriad of subjects you can cover, and there's documents this long that you can read. So pick your battles, but understand a little bit about how the DEX is calculated. And then when you see the DEX is dropping, use some of the dashboards that are already pre-built, use some of the dashboards that you might have created to try and help you identify it. Hopefully going forward, DEX workspaces will tell us why it's falling. But really you have to look into the data, right? To signpost your way.
So you're basically using NextThink for this type of data points, right? Not any other data sources, right? So it's just
no, not so predominantly for DEX, yes, NextThink. But as I said, we also have end user forums, we have ticket surveys on via ServiceNow, we have ad hoc feedback as well. So we try and take into account everything. So that's why we put the CSI process in place. So it's not just data points from a system, it's also, well, let's have a look at what users are saying.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Quick follow-up question. So you place a lot of trust in DEX representing true user experience, and I guess that's the intention of it. But how did you get to that point? Did you sort of validate whether if the DEX score drops for people, whether they actually have a bad experience, or whether maybe some of the parameters aren't quite fine-tuned and therefore might be misleading?
So there's a couple of things. Thank you for the question. So as I said before, sometimes we've noticed on NextThink that someone's having a frustrating experience. And I put it in rabbit ears or parentheses or whatever you want to call it. But actually when we spoke to them, they're like, no, I'm fine. And it was like whatever's defined within NextThink that we're using as signpost. But equally, we spoke to some other people and they said, no, it wasn't fine. So that's how we kind of differentiate. Now I get, in terms of scale, you can't do that all the time, but that's where the user sentiment comes into it, right? So at first, we were only tracking DEX through technology scores. That's why it's so important to do the user sentiment, to sort of say, well, all right, we're getting telemetry within NextThink that tells us you should be having a good experience. Are you actually having a good experience? Well, guess what? We're going to ask you twice a year. And also, you can talk to us anytime. And, users will talk to you if they've got a problem. I'm sure you'll all agree on that, right? If anyone's got a problem, it's not working, hello, fix it, right? But more kind of emotional, longer term things, sometimes they sit back and go, well, I got this survey and yeah, I'm kind of genuinely satisfied, but you know what would be really great? that, you know, if my laptop had a button where I pressed it and it automatically, you know, went into PowerPoint presentation mode or something like that. So really it's the two sides. Yes, the technology scores from the dashboards are great, but you really have to pick up the user sentiment. Yes, that's also metrics and scores, but it's the commentary as well. So it's really important, again, to engage with the users to understand whether that's a reality or not.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Maybe one last quick question. Oh, nearest wins. I'm sorry, I don't know who was first.
Cheers, thank you. We're about a year into our using NextThink for the first time, and we're using the technology scores. As you say, we've not turned on the user sentiment scoring yet because of probably some of the reasons you've identified, just nervousness. If we were to turn it on, how did you get feedback through the user sentiment about general IT service rather than the actual user experience with the desktop that they're using? And how did you differentiate those?
So it's a really good question. So when we first went out with the user sentiment, we were advised to change the word DEX. We actually said, how would you rate your digital experience? And we were castigated. Oh, users won't understand what that means. And I'm like, no, but let them get to know. Let's educate them. The business wasn't ready for it yet. So we went softly and slowly and gently, and we said, how would you rate your technology experience? Now, your question was around overall IT service. So you have to frame it. So we have a couple of questions where it says, are you satisfied with the service you received from technology? And actually just recently, 2 or 3 months ago, we've categorized it with some input actually from NextThink best practice to sort of say, which section of IT? So that is one possible way you could do it. One thing I would say about user sentiment, 5 to 6 questions. Don't make it any and more complicated than that, and only have one open user field at the end. Right? That's something that we stuck to from the beginning. I think it's paid dividends. But frame the questions in the correct manner and funnel it. So start off with a very broad one. How's your general digital experience? How's your DEX? And then put it down to how was your toast this morning? Funnel it down.
Maybe if anyone has any further questions, they might be able to approach you, Dan, afterwards.
Certainly.
And he's very approachable. And huge thanks for a fantastic breakout.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you.